Bandeyam Shri Guru Shiyata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishikam Vitam Scha Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyanajana Shilakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhishtam Supurakam Guru Ganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwa Gurunsha Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bijapradam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubharam Mareka Sharanam Nyashishvara Sridharam Vanshakopatarubyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Bhagawat by Srila Vrindaban Das Thakur. This is with translation by Sarva Bhavana Das. And because it's been a while since I was reading this, I'm going to start this chapter again. This is Antya-khanda, chapter 5, the Pastimes of Sri Nityananda. All glory to Sri Gaurasundar, the original spiritual preceptor of the entire universe. You are the desire tree of all the surrendered devotees. All glory to you, who are the most brilliant gem of the sannyasa order and the Lord of Vaikuntha. Kindly bless the living entities with your most auspicious and merciful glance. All glory to the Supreme Lord, Sri Gauranga, along with all his devotees and intimate associates, who are always victorious. O Lord, you are the most munificent kindness personified in an ocean of divine compassion. Please hear attentively the topics narrated about the Lord in the Antya-khanda, the concluding portion of this book. The Lord stayed on for another few days in the house of Sri Advaita, and then went to the house of Srivas Pandit in Kumarahata. As the Lord arrived, Srivas Pandit was immersed in deep ecstatic meditation upon Sri Krishna. Therefore, when Sri Gaurasundar, the Lord of Srivas's life, suddenly appeared before Srivas, the object and fruit of his deep and sincere contemplation was then realized. Srivas Pandit threw himself to the ground like a stick, paying his respects to the Lord. He clasped the lotus feet of the Lord to his chest, and heaving long and deep sighs of love, he wept profusely. The Lord picked up Srivas Pandit and embraced him, drenching him with his own jubilant tears of divine love. By the causeless mercy of the Lord, the entire family of Srivas was truly blessed, and raising their arms in gestures of overwhelming joy, they all crowded to see the Lord and began to weep in joy. Srivas Pandit was beside himself with happiness. He could not fathom the exhilaration he experienced by the personal presence of the Lord of Vaikuntha as a guest in his house. Placing his best and most exquisite asan upon his head, he brought it to the Lord. The lotus-eyed Gauranga then sat down, surrounded by his dearmost devotees, who then began kirtan. The ladies of the house all ululated, making auspicious sounds of welcome for the Lord, and the house of Srivas Pandit resounded with the highest joy, becoming engulfed in bliss. Ululated is when the ladies wag their tongues and make a sound. Especially in Bengal, they do that. News of the Lord's arrival spread quickly, and Acharya Purandar came running swiftly to see Sri Gaurasundar. The Lord embraced him and with with warm affection and reverence, considering him to be his father. In the Lord's embrace, Acharya Purandar, the most exalted and righteous among men, felt great spiritual energy surge through his body and was overwhelmed with spiritual emotion. He was unable to hold back his tears of extreme joy. Soon after, visitors streamed in, Srila Vasudev Datta, followed by Srila Shivananda Sen, and all their family members arrived to see the Lord. Vasudeva Datta was very dear to the Lord. A swan-like personality, by the Lord's grace, he knew all the most esoteric conclusions. He was constantly reflecting on how to properly benefit all living entities. Compassionate to everyone, he was personally absorbed in thoughts of Sri Chaitanya, deeply immersed in Sri Chaitanya's prema ras. He never looked for faults. He never looked for faults in others, but always praised their good qualities. He had great attraction and love for the Supreme Lord and his service, and was always respectful to the Vaishnavas, rendering humble service to them. When the Lord saw Vasudeva Datta, he was most pleased and jubilantly embraced him, weeping profusely in ecstasy. Sri Vasudeva quickly fell to his knees and clasped the Lord's lotus feet, crying out loudly. He cried so piteously that, what to speak of men, even stones would be moved to tears. Sri Vasudeva was endowed with such wonderful qualities that he alone could exemplify himself. The Lord loved Sri Vasudeva so dearly and said, "It is indeed true that I belong to Vasudeva." Repeatedly, the Lord said, "My body is the property of Vasudeva and his alone. He can sell me anywhere he pleases. I am truly by him. I say truly, by him I willingly allow myself to be sold to anyone. A moment's association with Sri Vasudeva Datta can bless anyone with Sri Krishna's protection from all dangers. O Vaishnav devotees, please hear me. I say truly that Sri Vasudeva owns me completely. Whoever is just touched by the breeze over his body will be always protected by the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna." The devotees became jubilant, hearing the Lord shower such causeless mercy on Sri Vasudeva, and loudly chanted the holy names. Sri Gaurasundar is extremely adept in glorifying his devotees to illustrate their glories. Similarly, the devotees are always eulogizing the transcendental qualities of the Lord. The Lord stayed for some time in Srivas Pandit's house, performing exhilarating pastimes. Srivas Pandit and his brother Ramai Pandit were always engaged in singing the glories of the Lord, and the Lord, feeling spiritually animated by their singing, danced in ecstasy. Both the brothers, Srivas Pandit and Ramai Pandit, are very beloved of the Lord. In fact, they're like two expanded bodies of the Lord. Srivas Pandit always pleased the Lord in many ways by performing kirtan, discussing the Srimad Bhagavatam, and by maintaining proper standards of Vaishnava etiquette. Surely, in the house of Srivas Pandit, the Lord performed some of his most wonderful pastimes. One day, the Lord called Srivas Pandit aside and asked him confidentially about some family matters. The Lord said, "I see you never go anywhere. How will you manage to make ends meet in the family? And how are you doing so presently?" Srivas Pandit replied, "My Lord, I have not the heart to go anywhere." The Lord gently prodded the subject further, asking, "You have a large family to maintain. How then will Will you look after them? Srivas Pandit said, certainly, whatever is my destiny will come as provisions. Each person receives his due. He will surely find whatever providence provides. We shall manage with whatever comes our way. Hearing this, the Lord said, then with this mentality, Srivas, take sannyas. Srivas replied, that is not possible for me. The Lord said, on one hand, you refuse to beg alms as a sannyas, and on the other hand, you do not make an effort for your livelihood or even collect food door to door. How do you plan to maintain your family? I am unable to understand you. Nowadays, if one does not make the effort of going hither and thither, then nothing will come of its own. Under the circumstances, please tell me what you propose to do. Srivas Pandit said, clapping his hand thrice, here is my explanation. 1, 2, 3. The Lord insisted, kindly clarify why you have clapped thrice. What does 1, 2, 3 imply? Srivas Pandit replied calmly, I have taken a solemn vow that if after fasting for 3 days I do not get a morsel of food by its own accord, then I will surely tie a stone around my neck and throw myself in the Ganga to drown. As soon as the Lord heard these words, he roared like thunder and said, what did you say, Srivas Pandit? You may fast due to a lack of food. By some rare chance, even Lakshmi Devi may have to go begging, but your family will undoubtedly never experience poverty. Srivas Pandit, have you already forgotten that I have said, and what I have said in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 22? Those who worship me with devotion, meditating upon my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. Those devotees who are fixed in undeviating meditation upon me have never to beg at the doorstep of anyone. All the mystic potencies automatically manifest in them. Even when the personified 4 Vedic goals of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha come knocking at their doors, my servitors turn down such requests. My devotees are fully protected by my Sudarshan disc at all times, by my Sudarshan chakra at all times, and even at the time of the total annihilation of this material universe, they remain completely transcendental and unaffected. The Lord continued, even if one who simply remembers my devotee, I take the responsibility for maintaining him. Surely the servitor of my servitor is most dear to me, and he certainly attains my shelter. My servitors need not have any concern about their maintenance, since I take their responsibilities on my shoulders. I will personally provide. So Srivas Pandit, you just remain happily in your house, and every requirement will automatically come to you. I am also blessing you and Sri Advaita with the boon that your transcendental bodies will never be affected by old age and debility. The Lord then called for Ramai Pandit and told him, listen, Ramai Pandit, I instruct you to always serve your elder brother as if he were the Supreme Lord. Know also that you are as dear to me as my very life. So I want you never to deviate from this service to Srivas Pandit. Both Srivas Pandit and Ramai Pandit were overwhelmed with divine bliss. The Supreme Lord had filled their hearts with indescribable joy. By the causeless mercy of Sri Chaitanya, even today, the pastime of everything arriving at the doorsteps of Srivas Pandit is still occurring. The characteristics and qualities of Srivas Pandit are impossible to enumerate. Just by remembering him, the 3 worlds become purified. Truly, while the Lord stayed in his home, Srivas Thakur served Sri Gaurasundar in every possible way to the Lord's fullest satisfaction. Bathed in the affection of Srivas Pandit's family members, the Lord even extended his sojourn for a few days more on the request of his dearmost servitor. The presence of the Lord transported the entire household upon continuous waves of exhilaration. From there, the Lord went to Panihati to visit the house of Sri Raghava Pandit, who was always busy in serving Sri Krishna. When the Lord arrived, Sri Raghava Pandit was overwhelmed to see his beloved Lord face to face and fell to the ground, offering obeisances. Beginning to weep in jubilation, he clasped the Lord's lotus feet, the very same lotus feet that are the source of Lakshmi Devi's constant joy. The Lord also was extremely happy to see his dear devotee, and so while bathing him in unrestrained tears of joy, he picked him up and embraced him. Sri Raghava Pandit did not know what to do or how to receive the Lord. Such was his effusive bliss. The Lord of Vaikuntha, Sri Chaitanya, was very pleased with the devotion of Srila Raghava Pandit and showered his mercy upon him. The Lord said, "By coming to Raghava Pandit's house and seeing him, all my gloom has now been dispelled. Coming to his house has resulted in the same purification and satisfaction as bathing in the holy Ganga." Then, smiling benignly at Srila Raghava Pandit, the Lord said to him, "Dear Raghava Pandit, please go immediately and prepare food for Lord Krishna's satisfaction." Raghava Pandit immediately went off swimming in ecstasy to execute the Lord's order. His heart inundated with divine love, he cooked a great, plentiful variety of preparations just as his heart dictated. The Lord came to eat, accompanied by Nityananda Prabhu and all his associates. The Lord thoroughly relished Srila Raghava Pandit's cooking and praised every preparation. The Lord spoke sweetly. Raghava Pandit has cooked everything so excellently, especially never have I ever tasted such a delectable preparation of shak, spinach. Raghava Pandit already knew that the Lord was very fond of shak, so he had made it a point to prepare shak in many delicious ways. The Lord, finishing his food, washed up and came back to sit down. So shak, of course, is spinach. The Mahaprabhu is very fond of spinach, different varieties of shak. Meanwhile, the word had spread that the Lord was staying in the house of Srila Raghava Pandit. Sri Gadadhar Das heard the news and came hastily to meet the Lord. Srila Gadadhar Das epitomized pure devotion to the Lord and was most near and dear to the Lord. So Gadadhar Das is a different person than Gadadhar Pandit of the Panchatattva. So Srila Gadadhar Das epitomized pure devotion to the Lord and was most near and dear to the Lord. The Lord was extremely pleased to see Gadadhar Das, and out of great love for him, he placed his lotus feet upon his head. Sri Purandar Pandit and Srila Parameshwari Das, a highly acknowledged scholar, also came rushing to see the Lord. Parameshwari Das was so surrendered to the Lord that the Lord had reciprocated and personally manifested himself in his body. Both these saintly devotees were in great ecstasy to see the Lord, and they cried tears of divine love. Sri Raghunath Vaidya, that very exalted Vaishnava whose good qualities are endless, also came to meet the Lord. In this way, an endless stream of devotees came to see the Lord. Panihati village experienced an extraordinary spiritual event by the advent and stay there of the Lord. By his personal presence, the Lord inundated the whole village with divine ecstasy. Once the Lord called Srila Raghava Pandit aside and spoke to him alone. He said, "Raghava, I want to reveal to you confidentially that Nityananda Prabhu is non-different from myself. You must understand that whatever Nityananda wants of me, I do without sophistry. I say that everything I do is through Nityananda. We are one and the same. That which is rarely attained by great mystics steeped in meditation is easily obtained from Sri Nityananda. Therefore, engage yourself with sincerity and deference in the service of Sri Nityananda, knowing him to be the Supreme Lord." Before leaving the most fortunate village of Panihati, the Lord instructed Makaradvaj, "Serve Raghava Pandit nicely. Know that the loving attachment you have for me is equivalent to that you have for Know that the loving attachment you have for him is equivalent to that you have for me and has my highest appreciation. Speaking to the Lord instructed Mukaradvaj, serve Raghava Pandit nicely. Know that the loving attachment you have for him is equivalent to that you have for me and has my highest appreciation. The Lord then came to a place called Varahanagar. There he visited the residence of an exalted and saintly Brahmin. The Brahmin was well versed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and upon having the audience of the Lord, he began to recite choice verses. As the Lord heard the verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam read with such sublime devotion, he went into an ecstatic trance. With a voice resembling the roll of thunder, he cried out, "Read on, read on." The pious Brahmin was blissfully submerged in reading aloud the text, and soon the Lord began to dance in divine exaltation, oblivious to everything around him. Verse after verse described the transcendental glory of loving devotional surrender, and the Lord swooned repeatedly, falling like a rod to the ground with tremendous force. Such was the Lord's spiritual ecstasy that the amazed people were afraid to see him fall with such intensity. This pastime lasted late into the night. The Brahmin read and the Lord danced. Gradually the Lord came out of his ecstatic trance and then calmly sat down. He was extremely happy with the Brahmin and so embraced him. The Lord said to him, "Never before have I heard anyone recite the Srimad Bhagavatam so sweetly. Therefore I name you Bhagavatacharya, the spiritual preceptor of the Bhagavatam. You need not engage in any other activity. Just continue to recite the Bhagavatam." Everyone was jubilant with the Brahmin's new and deserved title and appreciated it with loud chanting of the Lord's name. Blessing the residents of that place, blessing the residents of that place, then the Lord traveled along the banks of the Ganga, visiting the different houses of many devotees. He satisfied all the devotees, fulfilling the yearning of their hearts to see him. Finally, he returned to Nilachala, Puri. One who hears these descriptions of the Lord's return to Bengal, becomes immediately free from all distress. Great crowds of people greeted the Lord as he entered Jagannath Puri with jubilant sounds, saying, "The moving Lord Jagannath has come back to Nilachala." With the speed of lightning, the news flashed everywhere. Sri Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and the other Orien's associates of the Lord came running to see him. Owing to feelings of separation, the devotees had been morose ever since the Lord had departed, and now, upon his return, they were exultant and welcomed him with loud, joyous kirtan. The Lord, the reservoir of divine love, embraced them, and reciprocating their spiritual affections, bathed everyone with his effusive tears. Once in Nilachala, he began to reside in the house of Kashi Mishra. Now in Puri, the Lord spent all his time dancing in ecstasy and performing sweet, sublime kirtan everywhere. Often he danced before Lord Jagannath, losing himself in his ecstatic, graceful movements. Sometimes he danced within the closed precincts of Kashi Mishra's residence, and at other times he simply ran out to the ocean shores and danced to the rhythmic crashing of the waves upon the sand. Blissfully oblivious of every other activity, the Lord now engaged in his wonderful pastimes. With the first blowing of the conch shell in the temple, he was up early, and as the doors to Lord Jagannath opened, he would be there bowing before the Lord. So wonderful was his love for Lord Jagannath that tears cascaded from his eyes and flowed like the river Ganga. All the people stared transfixed in amazement, their worries and sorrows long forgotten. Crowds followed him wherever he went. All were deeply moved and inspired. Loudly they chanted, Hari, Hari, as they followed behind the dancing form of the Lord. The king of Orissa, Maharaj Prataparudra, also heard the news of the Lord's return to Nilachala. He immediately left the capital, Cuttack, and hurried to Nilachala, Puri. The king was very keen to see and take the Lord's darshan, but since long was without success. But for so long he was without success. He had requested many of the Lord's associates, including Sri Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, to approach the Lord on his behalf for darshan, but all of them were afraid to approach Sri Chaitanya on the matter. So thinking, he said exasperatedly to Sri Sarvabhauma, if you are so afraid to speak to him about me, then at least point him out to me without him seeing me. Appreciating the king's intense desire to see the Lord, the devotees decided to help him. They conferred and said, the Lord becomes totally absorbed while dancing, and the external world fades into oblivion, far from his consciousness. At that time, the king, who was so deeply religious, can see the Lord from his place of hiding. The devotees explained their plan to the king, who eagerly responded, saying, I just want to see him once by any means. Therefore, one day the king was informed that the Lord was dancing, and he hurried to the spot. He quickly found a vantage point that was well hidden. From there, the king saw the most wonderful sight of his life. The Lord's eyes were like two river sources, spouting unlimited tears like waterfalls, and at different times all the ecstatic symptoms were manifesting on his person. He sometimes fell to the ground with such terrible force that people gasped in horrified alarm. When the Lord began his roaring as loud as thunderclaps, the king had to hold his hands over his ears. Then suddenly the Lord would be overcome with the mood of intense separation from Krishna and break down into heartbreaking tears. So many subtle spiritual moods played upon the Lord's person that they are impossible for anyone to describe. Dancing constantly with his long arms up in the air and chanting, Hari, Hari, the Lord was fully saturated in ecstasy. Finally, when the Lord became aware of his immediate surroundings, he came and sat down amongst the devotees. After seeing the Lord's dancing until the end, the king stealthily slipped away, his heart full with effervescent joy and his inner eye still viewing the graceful movements of the Lord. Though the king was fully satisfied in his mind, was stuck a gnawing doubt, which later turned out to be a blessing in disguise. When the Lord was absorbed in dancing, tears cascaded down from his eyes and saliva drooled out of his mouth and nose in the acme of his divine ecstasy. His body was smeared all over with drool and dust, and the king could not comprehend that these were symptoms of the greatest spiritual love for the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Doubt crept into his mind, but without revealing this to anyone, he went away feeling happy and content. Upon returning home, he took rest for the night. However, even after the experience of the day, the king had failed to understand that his worshipable Sri Jagannath had appeared dancing before him as the incarnation of Sri Chaitanya, the topmost sannyasi. So now the Lord himself decided to communicate this truth to the Lord. That night, the pious king Prataparudra saw Sri Jagannath himself appear in his dreams. He saw that Jagannath's body was covered with dust, and his eyes, like torrential springs, gushed out incessant tears. Drool was dropping out of his mouth and nose, wetting his body and making it gleam. In the dream, the king thought to himself, what kind of pastime is this? All these activities of Jagannath are incomprehensible to me. The king approached his beloved Lord to touch his lotus feet, and Lord Jagannath said, No, this is not proper. When I am smeared with camphor, musk, sandalwood paste, vermilion, and perfumed oils, then I am most desirable and clean. But see now, my body is covered with drool and dust, and I am not fit to be touched by you. Today, You came to see me dancing, but when I was covered in dust and drool, you found me repulsive. Now that I am in the same dirty condition, how can you consider that I am clean enough to be touched by one such as you, who is a great monarch with an illustrious ancestry? Speaking in this manner, Sri Jagannath, the most merciful Lord, smiled at his servitor. The next moment the king saw, still in the dream, that Jagannath was no longer seated on the throne. The new occupant of the throne was Sri Chaitanya. His body was covered with dust, and smilingly he spoke to the king. How can this be possible? Today you went away, having found me repugnant. Then why do you want to touch me now? After the Lord finished speaking, he continued to smile benignly upon the king, then thus showering unlimited mercy upon him. Upon awakening in a short while later, the king began to weep bitterly and condemned himself for his previous offensive thoughts. He repented. I am the most sinful wretch alive. I could not recognize that Sri Chaitanya was the Supreme Lord. Of course, how much intelligence can an ordinary human being possess to understand the infinite absolute truth upon his own? Even Lord Brahma is deluded by the Lord's illusory energy, Maya. Therefore, my Lord, be gracious upon me and forgive me for my offensive behavior. Accept me, a lowly person, as your servant, and bless me. The king had realized that his worshipable deity, Lord Jagannath, was in fact Lord Chaitanya. With this realization, his yearning to meet the Lord increased manifold. Yet none of the Lord's associates could arrange a rendezvous with the Lord. Soon after this incident, the Lord was one day sitting in a beautiful garden surrounded by all his devotees. Alone and mustering up his courage, the king approached the group and fell flat at the lotus feet of the Lord. Immediately the king was heaved high on waves of ecstasy. Shivering, weeping, and horripilation all manifested upon his person. The Lord, seeing that the king was indeed imbued with the spiritual sentiments of a Vaishnava, placed his hands upon him and said, "Rise, O king." The touch of the Supreme Master's hand upon him brought the king out of his ecstatic trance, and he clasped his hands around the Lord's feet and began to cry. The king began to pray to the Lord, "Save me, O Lord. Save me. You are an ocean of mercy and the Lord of all living entities. Please look upon me favorably and forgive a fallen sinner like me. You are the fully independent and most munificent Supreme Lord. O Lord Chaitanya, you are the friend of the poor and meek. Please protect me, for even the most powerful of the demigods eulogize you with choice verses. You are the husband of the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi. You are the only shelter and Lord of all the surrendered souls. Your form is absolutely transcendental to all material inebriety. You are the initiator of congregational chanting, fearlessly propagating it, for you are the conqueror of the terrible demon Mura. Your transcendental names and qualities are all unfathomable, and you are the repository of all supramundane excellences. Your lotus feet are constantly worshipped and glorified by Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Lord Sesha, Sri Devi, and others. You are the priceless gem amongst all sannyasis. O Lord Gaurasundar, I bow humbly before you with this prayer that you may never reject me and deprive me of your sublime shelter. Lord Chaitanya was very satisfied with the prayers of King Pratraparudra. He blessed him, saying, "May you develop an unalloyed taste for serving Sri Krishna. Do not engage in any other activity except to render devotional service to Lord Krishna. Go and perform continuous chanting of the holy name, and you will be always protected by the Sudarshan disc of this Lord. By the Sudarshan disc of the Lord. Go and perform continuous chanting of the holy name, and you will always be protected by the Sudarshan disc of the Lord." My reason for coming to Nilacha was to meet the three of you, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Rai, and you. I have just one request that I wish you to keep. Do not broadcast my position. If you do so, then I will leave Puri right away. Saying this, he lifted the flower garland adorning his neck and placed it around the king. The Lord bade the king farewell, feeling very satisfied with him. Offering repeated dandavats to the Lord, the king left, taking seriously to heart the instructions of the Lord to him. The king's mission was complete. He had seen and met the Lord. From that time onwards, the king was always engrossed in meditation upon the lotus feet of the Lord. One who hears this narration of how King Pradraparudra met Sri Gaurasundar is guaranteed to receive divine love of Krishna. The pastimes of the Lord in Nilachala are innumerable, and he blissfully engaged in the pastimes of the Lord in Nilachala are innumerable, and he blissfully enjoyed his own activities. The eternal associates of the Lord who had appeared in Nilachala all spontaneously recognized Sri Chaitanya as the Lord of their hearts. Sri Pradyumna Mishra is an ocean of love for Krishna. Sri Chaitanya personally gave him shelter at his lotus feet. Then there is Sri Paramananda Mahapatra, who is an embodiment of nectarine love for Sri Chaitanya. Sri Kashi Mishra was always in a state of divine ecstasy, relishing the sublime nectar of Krishna Prema. The Lord even stayed in his house. In Nilachala, the Lord spent most of his time in congregational chanting in the company of these servitors. Most of the followers of the Lord who had developed disinterest to continue in family life all came to stay in Nilachala. Sri Nityananda spent a long time in Nilachala. He was always enthusiastic, jubilant, and roamed everywhere in Nilachala like the noonday sun. He was perennially saturated and intoxicated with divine love. I am incapable of writing fully about his unlimited ecstatic love. He was always chanting just one name, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. No other name escaped his lips, even in a dream, just as Sri Lakshman is completely devoted to Sri Ramachandra. Similarly, just as Sri Lakshman is completely devoted to Sri Ramachandra, similarly, Nitai is fully surrendered in his love for Sri Chaitanya. The reason for the whole world glorifying Sri Chaitanya even today is solely due to the mercy of Sri Nityananda. In this way, the two brothers, Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu, passed their days in Nilachala. So here we'll stop, and tomorrow we'll continue. All right. Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama Jaravaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Jaravaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Maranamahan Giridhari Gopinatha Maranamahan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Garadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Garadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunath Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Jai Gosai Kori Charana Mandan Jai Gosai Kori Charana Mandan Jawate Vignana Shabishta Puran Jaoite Vignana Shabista Puran H.I. Gosai Jar Muitaradas H.I. Gosai Jar Muitaradas Dasavar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Dasavar Mara Renu Mora Panchagras Kader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Kader Charana Sevi Bhakti Sanibas Janame Janame More Abhilas Janame Janame More Abhilas H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindaban Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindaban Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyan Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamuras Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamuras Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Vasa Parikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakshidhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishordas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namachar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadash Raghunath, Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Premsigo, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishvaparanya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Shri Ram Mayapur Ki Jai, Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Shri Koladvip Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ki Jai, Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Vrindaban Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai, Shri Purushottam Madam Ki Jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Jo Ki Jai, Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya Shri Nrsingadev Ki Jai, Bhakta Pravada Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.